Hello everybody, welcome back to another Buns video. Today we will be going over how will the top rookies of the 2018 draft do in the 2018 season. And as you know, more stuff factors into whether a player does well or not other than their skill. What other players are on their team can factor into it, how good the team they got drafted onto is, the system they're in. All this can affect how these players are going to produce. I'm going to try and predict how they will in this video. I'm going to go over the all the players taken, all the offensive players, QBs, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends taken within the first 2 rounds of the draft. And rounds after that it's harder to call how players from those rounds will do, but these first 2 rounds, I think I have a pretty good guess for how these players will do statistically wise. So let's get into it. We will start with the tight end position. I need these papers just to help me out. I can't remember everything, and I'm not going to just put it behind here and read from it. That's just doesn't work that way. I'm just going to use this to help me out, and that's what it's going to be, okay? I just need some papers to help me out. So, at tight end, the first tight end taken was Hayden Hurst from South Carolina, drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. This was a bit of an interesting pick because the Ravens already had Max Williams. But Hayden Hurst, I think he'll have a pretty rough season, I predict. First off, it's the Ravens. Their offense is never very good, especially their passing offense. They also have other tight ends, Max Williams, and another tight end they drafted, Mark Andrews, both of who should take away production from Hurst. So I have Hurst having 35 receptions for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think he'll contribute to the run game more than the passing game, obviously. Overall, he should have an okay season for a rookie tight end. In the future, he should get better. The next tight end taken in the draft is Mike Gesicki, the tight end for Penn State, drafted by Miami. I have him going for 40 receptions for 440 yards and 7 touchdowns. I don't have him gain a ton of yards, honestly. Miami's offense, their whole franchise is pretty much in transition. He should not have a very good quarterback throwing it to him. Tannehill isn't the best. Even though I'm an A&M fan, Tannehill is not an amazing QB. But I think Gesicki will be very productive in the red zone, just like he was in college. I think he could be like a Julius Thomas type player, when Thomas was in his prime. Julius Thomas for the Dolphins, be a productive red zone playmaker. In the future, probably get better just like Hurst. The last tight end taken was Dallas Goedert by the Philadelphia Eagles. Goedert, honestly, that pick had me really salty as a Cowboys fan. Everyone was freaking out about it, saying, no, the Eagles had the ultimate roast of the Cowboys. Well, first off, they really didn't. Because Goedert isn't very good, and we didn't even really need a tight end anyway. So we have Rico Gathers, so get that out of the way. I'm not too biased. About Goedert, I think Ertz is obviously already the starter, but the Eagles do use a lot of 2 tight end sets, so Goedert should get a fair amount of production. I predict he'll have 40 receptions for 450 yards and 5 touchdowns, those are pretty darn good numbers for a backup tight end. Really good numbers for a backup tight end. Goedert shows a lot of promise, and that's how I think he'll produce in his rookie year. Next up, we have the wide receivers. This class was supposed to be highlighted by Calvin Ridley, but instead DJ Moore got taken ahead of him. There's a lot of interesting names here. None really jump off the board at you. It was the top end of this receiving class was pretty weak, to be honest, but top to bottom is pretty good. It had nice depth. Not the best top, but nice depth. So as I go down, you'll see some later picks putting up as good or even better production than the top wide receiver picks. So let's get into it. The first wide receiver taken in the draft is DJ Moore by the Carolina Panthers from Maryland. Moore should instantly be a starter. The Panthers' number one receiver is Devin Funchess this year. Devin Funchess, that's not good. So Moore should have a starting spot right away. With a talented QB like Cam Newton, he should put up some pretty nice production. I think he will turn in 60 receptions for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. And obviously these numbers aren't going to be exact. You could give or take a few yards and receptions, but this gives you a rough estimate. I think Moore shows a lot of Steve Smith potential. He reminds me a lot of Steve Smith. He's a fighter. And Steve Smith, like, it took a few years to really take off. I think Moore, though, can start producing a little earlier, mainly because Moore has a more talented QB than Steve Smith did. So I think he'll turn in a really nice rookie year with 800 yards and 5 TDs. The number 2 wide receiver taken was Calvin Ridley, the receiver from Alabama by the Atlanta Falcons. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of Ridley. I'm an Alabama fan, and honestly, I'm really down on him. Everyone said, oh, he had a great ability of getting open. Well, he did get open well, but honestly, it's really easy to get open in college. It's really easy to get open in college. In the pros, it gets a ton harder. You gotta be able to have that burst and that strength, that physical ability. And Ridley never showed that ability to be physical and create yards after the catch and gain separation by being physical. He never really showed that. So I predict to have a bit of a rough rookie season, honestly, with 55 receptions for 600 yards and 4 TDs. The next receiver taken was Courtland Sutton, the receiver from SMU. He was taken by Denver Broncos. I predict he'll have 40 receptions for 500 yards and 6 TDs. And this is not because and obviously those are not good numbers. That is not because I don't think Courtland Sutton's a bad receiver, though. I just feel he won't get any big opportunities his rookie year because Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas are ahead of him. And that means Courtland Sutton will probably either have to play the slot or more of a backup role in the slot. He just is not suited for. He's not really a slot receiver. And Sutton is raw, so his rookie year should be pretty rough. In the future, he could get better. The 4th receiver taken was Dante Pettis, the receiver from Washington, drafted by the 49ers. I predict Pettis will have 35 receptions for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns, but that's not going to be the only area he produces. I predict he'll actually be a pretty good return man, take a 1 or 2 to the house, get some nice yardage. He was a really good return man in college, so I think he'll add a lot of value as a return man in the pros. As a receiver, I honestly don't think he'll do much. He didn't honestly show very good route running skills to me. And I don't think he'll be able to beat out Marquise Goodwin and Pierre Garcon for those starting spots. So don't look for him to be a very productive receiver in 2018. 5th receiver taken was Christian Kirk by the Arizona Cardinals for Texas A&M. I loved this pick for the Cardinals. Huge steal. Most people predicted Kirk would be a round 1 receiver. He fell all the way to the Cardinals. I like a lot of Kirk's abilities. He shows great route running, really nice speed, ability to make after the catch stuff happen. I've heard people compare him to Beckham. I don't think he's Beckham good, but I still think he's a really good receiver. I'd compare him more to like a Brandon Cooks. More Brandon Cooks than Odell Beckham. That's the type player I think he is. And Kirk's rookie season, I think I'll have 70 receptions for 800 yards and 4 touchdowns, as well as adding some nice production as a return man. He will have Larry Fitzgerald to mentor him, and as Kirk is a very hard worker and disciplined, I think he and Fitzgerald should really help him out in his rookie season, develop him very well. We have Anthony Miller next for the Chicago Bears from Memphis. I have him having 75 receptions for 900 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think, out of all the receivers, I think he'll have the best rookie year of all the rookie wide receivers. I feel Miller is, and this might sound crazy, I feel he is the next Antonio Brown. And you might scoff, say, what? But Antonio Brown was taken in the 6th round. and now he's one of the best receivers in football. So I should Anthony Miller, who was taken in the second round, be able to get just as good. Miller shows great. He has size I really like, about 6 feet tall. Honestly, I think that's the perfect size. Any taller than that, I feel you start getting slow out of your routes and you lose your burst. You lose burst. I feel he's a great height. He shows rack ability on great routes. I really, really like this guy. Really like him. And he and Mitch Trubisky should be a nice combo for years to come. His rookie year should be the best of any of these receivers. Now we have James Washington, the receiver from Oklahoma State, taken by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think 65 receptions for 750 yards and 4 touchdowns. And even though he will have to compete with Juju and Antonio Brown, I think he could put in some really good work from the slot or wherever they put him. He has a running back's build. He's really compact for a receiver, and I think he'll make really nice plays when he gets the opportunity to. I like this guy. Finally, we have DJ Chark, taken by the Jacksonville Jaguars from LSU. I think he will have 55 receptions for 800 yards and 8 TDs. So out of all these rookie receivers, he'll have by far the highest yards per catch average. I think for the Jaguars are a run-first offense. I think Chark could be their modern version of Deshaun Jackson, meaning he'll be their guy who, after they run the ball like 3-4 times in a row, he'll be the guy that takes the top off the defense as their deep threat. Chark has great speed, great height. I feel he'll be a step right in and help Jacksonville make the playoffs. He'll be a very good target for Blake Bortles deep. Now we have the quarterbacks. This is an interesting area as pretty much all of the quarterbacks taken in first and second rounds will not be starting game 1. Most of these guys will start. My earliest starter is Sam Darnold, and he starts after 7 games. So most of these guys will not start a ton of games. I based how many games they're going to start on who is the quarterback ahead of them and what that team's schedule looks like. So here we go. The first quarterback taken was Baker Mayfield. I have him starting 8 games, throwing for 1,800 yards, 12 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, as well as adding 137 rushing yards. I feel Mayfield is a very good QB, has a lot of nice targets around him, including Josh Gordon, Corey Coleman, Njoku, all those guys. Oh, and Jarvis Landry. How can I forget him? And so I think I have a pretty nice rookie year. If he had started all his games, he would have ended up having 3,600 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions, which are really respectable rookie numbers. That's how I think Mayfield will do. Now we have Sam Darnold for the New York Jets from USC. I think he will start 9 games, have 1,890 yards passing, obviously, 12 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, as well as 203 rushing yards. As you can see, he's going to turn the ball over a lot, I predict, and that's because he turned it over a lot in college. If he's going to be a good pro QB, which I think he will, he'll be a Brett Favre type player. Brett Favre did not have a very good rookie year either. I don't think Darnold will. I think he'll struggle his rookie year, but don't count him out for the future. Rookie year, Darnold should struggle, though, especially considering his lack of good targets. Next, we have Josh Rosen for the Arizona Cardinals from UCLA. And I think he'll start 4 games, have 720 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, as well as 50 rushing yards. And if he had started a full season, that would have translated to almost about exactly 3,000 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Those are not good numbers, and I don't think he'll do well his rookie year. Honestly, I'm not very impressed by Josh Rosen. Aaron says, "Oh, what a good throwing motion he has." But honestly, besides that, I don't see him move around in the pocket well. Even though Tom Brady's slow, Tom Brady moves around in the pocket great. He's very quick in the pocket. I think Rosen lacks that quickness. I really doubt Josh Rosen. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I doubt him. Next, we have Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills QB, from that place. Wyoming. I think he'll start 7 games, have 1,260 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, as well as 210 rushing yards. If Josh Allen had started the full season, he'd have about 2,900 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, and 500 rushing yards. So out of all my rookie QBs, besides one, and I think you know which one that is, Josh Allen will have the most rushing yards of any of them. I think he's a very talented rusher. He shows really good speed. I have him passing for. So I think he'll do all right his rookie year. Not great. The Bills' Zach top targets for him. This does not indicate what type player he will turn out. I feel as Josh Allen is obviously a developmental prospect, it should not start showing what kind of QB he will be until about year 3 or 4. The last QB we have is Lamar Jackson, QB from Louisville, taken by the Baltimore Ravens. And I think Lamar Jackson will start 6 games, pass for 1,140 yards, 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and add 300 yards on the ground with 4 rushing touchdowns. So, if he started all his games, that would equal out to about 3,000 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and 700 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. So those are like Vick-like numbers, and honestly, I think Jackson is the next Michael Vick. And everyone says, oh, Jackson needs time to develop. Honestly, I think he's ready to step in right away. If the Ravens do want to start him all year, I think he could definitely step in right away, prove everyone wrong, just like Deshaun Watson did, and take the league by storm. But I do not think he will start all 16 games. I think he will start 6. And so there are his stats. Finally, we have the running backs. So it's an exciting position group out of all these, I feel. There are some big steals in here, some big busts in here, and I'll go over them right now. The first running back taken was Saquon Barkley, the running back from Penn State, taken by the New York Giants. I predict Barkley will have 250 carries for 1,100 yards, a 4.4 average, 10 touchdowns, and add 50 receptions for 450 yards and 2 touchdowns. So those are really nice numbers, about 1,600 all-purpose yards. I don't see him gain a ton of carries as he will have to compete with Jonathan Stewart for carries of the ball. But when it comes to receiving, I do think he will be New York's by far most receiving back. Will catch most passes of all those backs by far. He should have very, very good rookie year. Next, we have Rashad Penny, taken by the Seattle Seahawks. This was a bad pick, to be honest. He was a round 4 talent, but the Seahawks took him anyway. I think Penny will really struggle. The Seahawks have a horrendous offensive line. And he'll have to compete with a bunch of other players for carries as well. All these things should add up to an abysmal 150 carries for 570 yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, a 3.8 average, 20 receptions for 160 yards, and 0 receiving touchdowns. Yeah. Next, I have Sony Michel from Georgia, taken by the New England Patriots. And I think this was a great, great, great pick. Michel leading all of my rookies in yards per carry. I think he could definitely fill in that void left by Dion Lewis in New England. I think Michel will have 180 carries for 900 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, a 5.0 average, 30 receptions for 310 receiving yards. And Michel, I think if he was given more chances to carry the ball, would do even better. But in New England, running backs don't get a ton of opportunities to carry the ball. When he does, I think he'll do great. Next we have the other Georgia running back, Nick Chubb, taken by the Cleveland Browns. And I do not think he will do very well. He's going to have to compete with Duke Johnson Jr. and Carlos Hyde for carries, and those are 2 pretty good running backs. And the Cleveland offensive line is in a bit of a state of transition with Joe Thomas gone. All this should add up to 150 carries, 630 yards, 4 touchdowns, a 4.2 average, 15 receptions for 120 receiving yards for Nick Chubb. Next, we have Ronald Jones II from USC, drafted by Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he will have 200 carries for 900 yards, a 4.5 average, 5 touchdowns, and 200 receiving yards off 25 receptions and a receiving touchdown. Jones, I really like Jones. I think he's really underrated. I honestly think the only reason he fell this far was because he had a bit of a rough combine. I really like Jones. I think that should translate into a pretty darn good rookie season for him. Now we have Kerryon Johnson, the running back from Auburn, drafted by the Detroit Lions. And I have him having a very rough rookie year. 130 carries for 481 yards, a 3.7 average, 3 touchdowns, as well as 300 yards off 330 receptions for 2 touchdowns receiving. And those are rough numbers, but it's not Kerryon's fault. I think Kerryon Johnson is a very good back. In fact, he was the number 3 back on my draft board. The reason I think he'll do this poorly is because he has to compete with Ameer Abdullah and LeGarrette Blount for carries, and the Detroit Lions offensive line is horrendous, and they just have not been able to run the ball historically. So he'll have a rough rookie year. Finally, we have Darius Geis, the running back from LSU, taken by Washington Redskins, and he is the last QB on this list, and surprisingly enough, I think he will lead all rookie running backs in rushing yards. Not all-purpose yards, that's Saquon, rushing yards. I think he'll have 280 carries for 1,288 yards, a 4.6 average, 8 rushing touchdowns, 18 receptions for 170 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. I think Geis will do us well because, honestly, first off, he's just a great back. Runs with violence, power, aggression. Second, the Redskins have a great offensive line highlighted by Trent Williams and Brandon Scherff. Brandon Scherff is a guy that just keeps getting better every year. I think he will be able to run the ball great behind that offensive line, and should just have a great rookie season. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know, am I right? Am I wrong? Who will be the best rookie this year? How will the rookies do? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Buns out.